Hello everyone. In this lesson, we are going to eliminate the camera pop that occurs when a character crouches in Unreal Engine 5 third person template. So we'll understand why it happens and then build a clean, reusable spring arm component that keeps the camera perfectly stable, even when the crouch button is spammed. Let us take a look at our overview really quick. Okay. So we'll start by looking at why crouching causes the camera to pop. Then we'll examine how capsule height changes affect the view. From there, we'll design a fix that doesn't modify engine code and build a custom spring arm component that compensates instantly for height changes. And the end result is a perfectly stable pop-free camera. Finally, let us take a look at the learning objectives. By the end of this lesson, we'll understand what causes crouch-tilted camera snaps, how capsule height interacts with view height, and how to build a custom spring arm that compensates for those changes instantly. Okay? And we'll also learn how to integrate this component into any project without modifying engine source. Let us first actually see what we will be achieving. Okay, right now if we press the crouch button, as you can see, the camera does not move, and even if we are to spam, as you can see, nothing happens, right? The You need to press and hold for the player to crouch, right? If we spam, nothing happens. Okay, see, and there's the walking, right? Even if I'm spamming the crouch while walking, as you can see, like, doesn't happen much. But if I press and hold, as you can see, it's a very clean blend, right? And there's no camera pop, right? As you can see, also, as you can see, the capsule also shrinks, right? It's not like that we do not shrink the capsule at all. We do actually. As you can see, the half height gets changed. Okay, so this is actually the final version of what we are going to make. Okay, hello everyone. So for this lesson we are using the Unreal Engine 5.7. Okay, let's go ahead and click on this new project on the top left, and this will open up the games tab. So we'll be using the third person template for this, and we'll be using the C++. Okay, make sure the target platform is desktop, quality preset can be maximum. Okay, and for the name we are going to name it as crouch fix. Okay, then we'll create, and this would take some time to load up the project, okay, depending on your PC. Okay, so once the editor opens up, the C++ should also open. I'm using Rider IDE. Okay, so if you don't have it, it's fine, you can continue with Visual Studios. Otherwise, if you want to follow along same as me, then you can download this IDE. It's called Rider and it's free to download. Okay, so let's get started. So right now, on the third person one, like by default we do not actually have a crouch, right? So we need to implement that, right? And also we require some animations as well, right? Okay, so for the animations I'm going to use this paid animation set from Fab. Okay, so if you want to use this one or use your own, you are free to do that. Okay, and if you want to use this, I will have it linked on the description. So I will add it to Crouch Fix, add to project, and that's done. So once that's done, you should see it over here, stealth locomotion, right? So I'll go to animations in place. Okay, I need these. what I'll do is right click, retarget animation, and I'll retarget it to the queen. Simple. Okay, now the retarget asset is not there, so I'll keep this auto generate retargeter to be true. Okay, first I'll export retarget assets, okay, to character. Yeah, character export. Okay, now this creates the IK retargeter. Okay, now once that is created, I'll go back to the stealth locomotion folder, animation folder, and then in place, and I'll select all of this and retarget animations, okay, to the queen. Simple. And I'll uncheck this auto generate retargeter this time and select the retarget asset, okay, the one that we created. Now whichever ones you want to retarget, you have to select those. Okay, so what I can do is I can search for it, stealth, then underscore, I'll give a space because the middle ones I want to leave, and then finally postfix would be at the IP. Okay, so that way I can actually really select all of this, right? This is all the fast ones, so I need the slow ones as well, like this, slow, and this one, right? So yeah, that's selected. From here the slow is selected, right? So export animations, I'll go to the folder, I'll go to animes, I'll create a new folder, and this will be crouch. Okay, and I'll export over here. Okay, override existing files, that's fine, and there we go. Save all of this should be working really well with queen. Okay, so that's great. Now let's go look at the third person character. Okay, now if you go to class defaults and on the details panel, if you do not have this open up, what you can do is go to window and then details. Okay, now scroll down all the way, and under the input tab you can see you have the jump action, move action, look action, mouse action, right? So all of this is done in the C++ class. So we'll click on that and it should open up over here like this. Really good. So what we want to do at first is make a function, right? Like this, handles crouch pressed inputs from either controls or UI interfaces. Okay, and this one would be start crouch. I'll make two functions. Okay, and this one would be stop crouch. Okay, so let's go ahead, generate definition. This one should call in crouch. That's fine. So by default, so we do not actually need to pass anything inside this one because by default it is set to false. So by default it already, if I do not pass something, it is by default it's false. Okay, so that's why I can leave it without any input parameters. Okay, so I'll call uncrouch. So I'll call uncrouch on the stop crouch function, as you can see. And finally, one more thing we need to do is on the setup player input component, we need to take these two, right? I'll put it over here. I'll call this crouching, right? And this one will call, start crouching, and that is a crouch fixed character, right? And this one would be stop crouch on the a crouch fixed character. Okay, that seems good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close the Unreal Engine editor. Okay, and then start debugging. Okay, once the editor is open, we can reopen whatever we had. And now if you go to the details, you should actually, did we add the crouch button? No, I don't think, we forgot, sorry about that. So let's go back to the C++ and we need to add a input action. Okay, now this would be again crouch action. Okay, like that. So press debugger again to open up the Unreal Engine editor. Okay, the editor has opened up again, and let's go back to the details tab and scroll down, right? And as you can see, there's this crouch action now, so we need to make a crouch button, right? So let's go to the IA jump and we'll duplicate this. Okay, we'll call this crouch. There we go, save all. And now you don't need to do anything over here. Now we need to find the IMC default. Okay, now if you're wondering, right, we don't see the input mapping context put over here. It has been moved, okay, with 5.6 I guess, to the player controller class. Okay, now in Blueprint also there comes a player controller as a preset. So over here, if you go to class defaults, it should be under input mapping. See, there's the default mapping context and the mobile. Okay, this has the mouse look one, and this is the default one that we're using right now. So in the mappings, I will add the crouch, okay, and have it on C. Okay, now let's go ahead and press play, and if I press C, nothing happens. I mean, obviously we have not added the animation, so nothing should happen like visually, but the capsule should have shrinked, right? But it does not actually happen. So let's debug that. Okay, go back to C++, okay, and where we have the start crouch, right, we can have breakpoints over here, right? And basically this will help us to know if it is triggered at all or not, right? And as you can see, it's not triggered at all because we have forgot to add it over here. That's the first part. And now press C, nothing happens even now, although we have added it over there, right? So this one never triggers. So we forgot to actually change this bind action over here, right? So what we're going to do is close the editor again and change this to crouch action. Okay, so both of these actually should be crouch action, right? Press on the debugger once more, and this should fix everything that we have issues with. Okay, so the editor is opened up again, and now let's press play, show collision, press C, there you go. The function triggers, as you can see, right? So but our character does not crouch, right? So the reason for this is in our character movement component, if we search for crouch, there's something called can crouch, right? So we need to have this enabled first, okay? And then if we press C, now you can see the collision actually shrinks, right? Like that. So now we have crouch implemented. Now let's also achieve this visually a bit, okay? So click on the mesh. Let's go to the anim class. And over here, you can see we have locomotion over here, right? It uses the locomotion state machine. So let's go inside of the idle. So we need to know when our character is crouching or not, right? We already have a should move or is falling. Basically, should move is basically tells us if our character is moving or not, and is falling tells us if we are in air or not, right? So similarly, from the movement component, okay, we'll add a pin on this sequence as well. From the movement component, we'll ask if we are crouching, right? There we go. We'll promote this to a boolean. We'll call it b is crouching and plug it from the sequence, right? Again, comment it out. C is the hotkey for comment. So set is crouching from the movement components crouching state. Okay, so let's go back to the locomotion state machine. Over here we can call blend state blend poses by bull. Okay, so if you are not crouching, we can do the idle, right? Otherwise we should do the stealth crouch, right? Like this. So let's play, and as you can see, animation wise we crouch, right? But it's only if we are not moving, right? If we are moving, we get back up actually, even if we are actually crouched, right? So let's do that next. And also the popping that I was mentioning in the title and overview. So this is what the pop is. As you can see, the camera, it feels bad, right? So this is what we are going to fix. So also one more thing is, like, I don't like how this animation is triggering so fast, right? So what I want to do is I want to change the blend time to 0.5, right? So if I press and hold, only then the character crouches on uncrouches, right? Otherwise it just stays like this, right? Seems much natural. So let's go ahead and see the walk and run over here. And over here you can see it's a blend space player, right? So we'll open it and find it on the content browser, and we want to duplicate this. Okay, we'll call this I'll walk run crouched. Okay, like that. Save all, open it up, and on the asset details we want to delete all these samples over here. Okay, and before we set up the samples back again, on the axis settings we want to change the speed, the max value. Okay, so let's go to the third person character once more. On the character movement component, let's search for crouch again, and as you can see, max walk speed crouched is 300, right? So the max speed should be 300 over here, not 600. Make this 4. Okay, like that. This is 8. Seems good. Now again I want to search for stealth, and we have all of this. Okay, so this is from standing to okay, so we need one more. Stealth underscore crouch. Stealth idle IP over here. I want this one, right? So I'll retarget this one as well. Animation to our queen. stealth underscore idle IP, export animation to characters, mannequins, animations, and crouch. Okay, import, export. Okay, there we go. So we want to fix the unarmed over here first. Go to locomotion idle. We want to change this idle IP. There we go. And then finally on the blend space uncrouched, we want to have the idle, okay, at the bottom like this. Okay, so now we want to do the slow. Now it's over here and here. Okay, both the leftmost and the rightmost are backwards. So back left is this one, back left. Back right should be this one. Sorry, not that one, this one. Forward slow IP would be this one in the middle. Forward left is this one. Forward right, okay, for some reason it's, yeah, there we go, forward right, and then left, and then right, like that. So now we want to do the first again. Back is the leftmost and the right, the rightmost and the leftmost. Backward left, backward right, forward, forward left, forward right, left and right. Okay, so this is how it should look. Okay, seems fine. Now let us go back to our animation blueprint. We will call the same blend poses by bull. From false it will be the idle. From false it would be the standing one. Otherwise we can copy paste this and change it from the details panel. Scroll down, we can change it to the crouched like this. We'll copy the direction and ground speed, plug them in as such, and this one should be is crouching, and same thing for the blend time, make these 0.5 as well. Now play and you can see you walk very nicely, right? The animation is matched, looks good. Yeah, but we still have the snapping, so that's the second thing we have to fix, okay, or the primary thing that we have to fix. Okay, so let's begin with the final part where we fix this snapping issue. Okay, so let's go to the C++ classes inside crouch fix, and over here we can right click and press on the new C++ classes, and let's go to all classes. We'll search for spring arm component, okay, and we'll call this the crouch fix spring arm component, okay, or advanced, whatever you want to call it, okay, and prefix it with CF because that's our project name, okay, and we should always have a prefix for that. And I'll put it on the under the components folder, okay, and create class, right? Now in the CPP, we can actually remove these components because we have both of the .h and the CPP in the same folder structure, right? So if you go to games, source, crouch fix, and then go to components over here, you can see the .h and the CPP are in the same folder. So since they are in the same folder, we no longer need to prefix it with the folder name. Okay, and now we need to add a few variables over here. Okay, so let me just go ahead and fill up the .h first. Okay, all the variables and the functions that we would require, and then I will explain each of them. Okay. You can see that under the public access specifier, I have added the constructor, and under the protected, you can see we have the virtual void begin play override, and then we have the tick component. And as you can see, it is very different than the actor tick that you are most familiarized with. Okay, instead of just the delta time, we also have the level tick enum. Okay, and then the actor component tick function. Okay, as the input parameters. Okay, and then finally we have the in the private we have three variables, that is the standing relative location. Now this is for us to set on the begin play. Okay, or the constructor. Actually it should be in the begin play, not the constructor, sorry. And then we have the standing capsule half height, again same thing at begin play. And this is a boolean that I have created to check that the half height was properly set at begin play or not. Okay, so let us go ahead and create these functions or override this function definition. So now these are created. Let me again go through and write them up one by one. Okay, now let me explain what I have done. Okay, so this is the constructor. Okay, so we have made sure that the component can take, right? So that's why it's set to true. Now in the begin play, we have set the standing relative location as the actor relative location. Okay, so at begin play we get the location of the spring arm and set it as our standing relative location. Then we check that our character owner is valid, and we also check our capsule component is valid, right? So if both of them are valid, what we are doing is we are taking the unscaled capsule half height value from the capsule component and then storing it onto our variable that we have created, standing capsule half height. Okay, and now this boolean that we had made, we are just checking that our capsule component and character owner was valid, and that this data was actually set. Okay, the standing capsule half height data was actually set. If it wasn't set, it would be 0, right? And that's why if it would be 0, then we do not actually want to tick, and then we want to get out of the logic, right? So now finally let's go to the tick component. We are checking, like I said, if the capsule half height, standing capsule half height was set or not properly. If it wasn't set, we do not need to tick anything else, we get out of the tick. Okay, we also make sure our owner is valid. If not, we exit out of the tick again. And again, for same for the capsule component. If our capsule component isn't set, or there's garbage data on it, we exit out of tick once again. Okay, finally we get the unscaled capsule half height. Okay, and then store it onto our current height. Now remember, this is running on tick, so every tick we are setting the current half height. Okay, and then we are calculating the difference of that height based on the standing capsule half height that we had set at begin play, and by subtracting the current half height that we are calculating just before this, right? So from that we get the half height difference, and then we have the standing relative location, so we are actually storing it in a local variable. Okay, that is called target relative location. And now if our height difference is again greater than 0f or 0.1, 0.2f, what we do is we get the scale shape from the capsule component and store it in a float variable called scale. Then we set the offset, z offset, right, based on the half height difference that we have calculated multiplied by the scale, right? And that's why we had to store the standing relative location in a local variable, so we could actually change the z of it with the offset, right? And then finally we set the relative location of the spring arm to be our target relative location. Okay, basically that's it. It's a very simple logic and a very simple solution. Okay, now with everything done, the last thing for us to do is change the spring arm component on the character, right? So ours is called this one, so we need to change this over here. We'll add forward declaration. We no longer require this spring arm over here, right? Also same should be over here, right? There we go. And on the CPP, over here and over here, also make sure to include the spring arm component over here. We do not need this include anymore. And let's start debugging. Okay, once the editor is open, now if we press C, you can see we no longer have that issue with crouching, right? So there's no more camera pop, right? Now this is much more natural, seems really good, right? Also you can disable the collision, right? This one looks much natural, much better, right? So that brings us to the end. Okay, to wrap up, we learned why the crouch camera pop occurs in Unreal Engine 5 third person character. We learned how capsule height changes impact the camera and how a custom spring arm lets us cancel those changes instantly. This technique keeps the camera stable, responsive, and clean, even when crouch is toggled rapidly. This technique keeps the camera stable, responsive, and clean, even when the crouch is toggled rapidly. And because it's implemented as a reusable component, you can drop it into any character controller with zero engine modifications. And that concludes our tutorial. Thank you so much.